Mark, I want to do something different to start today's episode, something a little uncomfortable for both of us and for the listener.
Okay, I'm nervous, but go.
I want to play a recording in your head. I want you to imagine yourself in your last English conversation, the last one you can clearly remember. Maybe it was today, maybe it was yesterday, doesn't matter, just picture it.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
Now I want you to count something. How many times in that conversation did you use the word very?
Oh no.
Just guess, a rough number.
Honestly, probably 6 or 7 times, maybe more.
And what were you using it with? Let me guess. Very good, very tired, very interesting, very nice, very difficult, very important, something like that.
Almost exactly that. How did you know?
Because every single B2 and C1 learner does this, almost without exception. They use very dozens of times a day in almost every conversation with almost every adjective, and they don't even notice.
And the worst part is, most of them know they shouldn't. They've been told by teachers, by textbooks, by language YouTubers, stop saying very, use stronger words, but they keep doing it.
They keep doing it. And the reason is fascinating. The reason is not laziness in the bad sense. It's not lack of effort. It's not poor study habits. It's something much deeper. It's how the brain itself is wired.
The brain has a specific mechanism that forces you to keep using very, even when you know better, even when you've learned other words, even when you actively want to stop.
And today, we are going to explain that mechanism, the lazy brain trap, the reason your vocabulary stays flat even when you've been studying for years. And more importantly, we are going to give you the specific tools to override it, to force your brain onto a higher path, to finally start using the sophisticated words you already know but never reach for.
Welcome to Side by Side English Podcasts. I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie. Today's episode is for the B2 or C1 learner who feels like their vocabulary is repetitive, who hears themselves saying the same words again and again, who's learned better words but somehow never uses them in real speech. We're going to fix that today.
Stay with us. We have the neuroscience of why your brain reaches for very so much, even at B2 and C1 when learners have plenty of better words available. A complete breakdown of the lazy brain trap, 5 categories of high-level upgrades you can use instead of very, the 3-day forcing method to break the habit permanently, a role play showing a learner before and after, the situations where very sneaks in most often, and a word tour with 6 powerful B2 to C1 words.
Quick question for the comments before we begin. How many times do you think you say very in a normal English day? Be honest. We want to see the real numbers.
Okay, let's open up the brain. So, Sophie, let's start with the science. Why does the brain reach for very so much, even at B2 and C1 when learners have plenty of better words available?
Okay, so this comes down to something neuroscientists call the principle of least effort. The brain, like all biological systems, is energy efficient by default. It will always take the path that requires the least amount of work to achieve the necessary result.
And speaking is one of the most energy-intensive things the brain does.
Massively energy intensive, especially in a second language. Constructing sentences in real time, retrieving vocabulary, monitoring grammar, processing the listener's reactions, all happening in fractions of a second. So the brain is constantly trying to find shortcuts. Anything that reduces the workload, the brain will use.
And very is the ultimate shortcut.
It is the perfect shortcut. Think about it. You want to intensify any adjective, make it stronger, more extreme, more noticeable. What's the cheapest, fastest, most reliable way to do that? Add very in front of it. Done.
Tired becomes very tired. Good becomes very good. Interesting becomes very interesting. Nice becomes very nice. Difficult becomes very difficult. Important becomes very important. Something like that.
And the brain loves this because it gets the job done with almost no work. Meaning crosses the gap, communication succeeds, the listener understands. So the brain learns this strategy works. Keep using it.
And here's the trap. The strategy works in the sense that it communicates, but it works in the laziest possible way. and the brain has no internal motivation to stop using it because the brain doesn't care about your vocabulary range. The brain only cares about energy efficiency.
This is so important. The brain is not on your team when it comes to growing your vocabulary. The brain is on the team of use as little energy as possible, and those two teams are in direct conflict.
Right. Your conscious self wants to sound sophisticated, to use precise words, to stop saying very all the time. But your unconscious brain wants to spend the least energy possible, and every time you open your mouth in a real conversation, your unconscious brain wins.
Because real conversations happen too fast for conscious decisions to override the default path. The brain reaches for very before your conscious self even has a chance to suggest an alternative. The lazy path wins by speed.
And this is why learners can have a vocabulary list with 100 words like exhausted, drained, depleted, wiped out, shattered, beat, and still say very tired in actual conversations, because those 100 better words are in storage. They are available, but they require active retrieval, which costs energy, so the brain skips them.
And here is the painful part. The longer you let your brain reach for very, the deeper that path gets reinforced. Every time you use very, you make it more likely that next time the brain will reach for very again. The shortcut becomes a highway, and the highway becomes the only road your brain knows how to take.
This is called neural reinforcement. Patterns that get used a lot become stronger. Patterns that don't get used fade. And so the vocabulary you don't reach for in real speech slowly fades from accessibility even though it's still in storage.
Use it or lose access to it. Not lose the word entirely, but lose the speed at which you can reach it.
And this is the lazy brain trap, the pattern that keeps even very advanced learners sounding less sophisticated than they actually are. Their vocabulary is bigger than their speech reveals because their brain is taking the cheap path every time.
Okay, so now we know the problem. Let's talk about the solution, because just understanding the neuroscience isn't enough. We need to actually rewire the path.
Right. The solution has two parts. Part 1, give the brain better defaults, specific upgraded words it can reach for instead of very. Part 2, force the brain onto those defaults until they become the new automatic path.
Yes, and the second part is the harder one, because the brain will resist. The brain will say, but the old way worked fine, and you have to override that resistance until the new defaults become wired in.
Let's start with the upgrades, because once learners see how easy and powerful the alternatives are, the motivation to switch becomes much stronger.
Yes, so I want to break this into 5 categories. 5 very common very plus adjective combinations that learners use all the time. And for each one, I want to give the high-level upgrade, the single word that does the work of very plus adjective in one shot.
Let's go.
Category 1, tiredness. Very tired is probably the single most overused phrase in learner English.
Upgrades?
Exhausted, drained, wiped out, worn out, shattered, beat. Each one is a single word that means very tired, and each one carries its own flavor. Exhausted is neutral and strong. Drained suggests emotional fatigue. Wiped out is casual. Worn out suggests gradual fatigue. Shattered is British and intense. Beat is casual American.
And listen to the difference between I am very tired and I am completely shattered. Both mean the same thing, but the second one is alive. It has color. It has personality.
And nothing has been added in terms of difficulty. Shattered is not a hard word. It's not advanced grammar. It's just a different lexical choice. But the impact on how you sound is enormous.
Category 2?
Category 2, goodness or quality. Very good, very nice, very interesting. These are perhaps the most beige phrases in English.
Upgrades?
Instead of very good, try excellent, outstanding, fantastic, brilliant, superb. Instead of very nice, try lovely, delightful, wonderful, charming, warm. Instead of very interesting, try fascinating, compelling, intriguing, thought-provoking, captivating.
And again, none of these are hard words. They're not C2 academic vocabulary. They're everyday B2 and C1 words. They're just words that learners know but don't use.
Exactly. The whole episode is not about learning new words. It's about activating words you already know, moving them from passive vocabulary to active vocabulary.
Category 3?
Category 3, difficulty. Very difficult, very hard, very complicated. These come up constantly when learners talk about work, study, problems, situations.
Upgrades?
Challenging, demanding, tough, intense, tricky, brutal, overwhelming. Each one has its own flavor. Challenging is positive, suggests something worth doing. Demanding suggests it requires a lot. Tough is direct and casual. Brutal is dramatic. Overwhelming suggests emotional weight.
And so this project is very difficult becomes this project has been pretty brutal, or this project is incredibly demanding. Same idea, completely different impact.
Category 4, importance. Very important is everywhere, in meetings, in emails, in conversations.
Upgrades?
Crucial, critical, essential, vital, key, significant. And these aren't fancy. These are normal, everyday adjectives, but they replace very important with one strong word.
This is very important becomes this is crucial or this is absolutely key. Cleaner, stronger, more memorable.
Category 5, emotions. The very plus emotion pattern is one of the most common. Very happy, very sad, very angry, very excited, very surprised, very scared.
Upgrades?
Very happy becomes thrilled, delighted, overjoyed, ecstatic. Very sad becomes devastated, heartbroken, miserable, down. Very angry becomes furious, livid, irritated, fuming. Very excited becomes thrilled, buzzing, pumped. Very surprised becomes stunned, shocked, amazed, blown away. Very scared becomes terrified, petrified, freaked out.
And these emotional upgrades are some of the most powerful because they reveal personality. When you say, I'm very happy, the listener gets the information. When you say, I'm thrilled or I'm absolutely buzzing, the listener gets the feeling.
And feeling is what makes language alive. Information without feeling sounds robotic. Information with feeling sounds human.
5 categories, dozens of upgrades. Every single one of them already familiar to most B2 learners. Every single one of them available right now. The only thing missing is the wiring, the reaching.
Which brings us to part 2 of the solution, how to actually force these into your speech. Because as we said earlier, knowing the words isn't enough. The brain has to be retrained to reach for them automatically.
Yes, and the method is simple but powerful, the 3-day forcing method. 3 days of conscious, deliberate, almost uncomfortable training after which the new paths start to wire in.
Walk us through it.
Day 1, Awareness Day. For the entire day, you are not trying to upgrade anything. You are just counting. Every time you say very in English or even in your head, you note it, mentally or on your phone. The goal is just to see how often you do it.
And this is shocking for most learners. The number is always much higher than they expected.
Always. Most learners realize they say very 30, 40, sometimes 50 times in a single day. And awareness alone is the first step. You cannot fix what you cannot see.
Day 2.
Day 2, Interrupt Day. Now that you've seen the habit, every time you catch yourself about to say very, you stop, even mid-sentence, and you make a conscious choice. You pause. You ask yourself, what's a better word for this? And you use that better word instead.
This is the uncomfortable day.
Very uncomfortable because you'll catch yourself mid-sentence. You'll feel awkward. You'll lose flow. You'll feel like you're slowing down your English. That's all expected. That's the work. You are overriding the brain's default, and the brain will protest.
And this is where learners often give up because the discomfort feels like failure, but the discomfort is the training. The discomfort is the brain rewiring.
Day 3?
Day 3, Lock-in Day. By now, your brain has seen the pattern many times. The interruption is becoming faster. The upgrade is starting to come more naturally. So today, you continue interrupting, but you'll notice that some of the upgrades are starting to arrive on their own before you have to consciously choose them.
That's the moment the new path starts to form.
And after 3 days of deliberate practice, the habit is still not fixed, but the wiring has started. The brain has begun to learn that very is no longer the default, and every time you reach for an upgrade after day 3, you strengthen the new path a little more.
So 3 days isn't enough to complete the rewiring, but 3 days is enough to break the seal, to start the process, so that natural, sophisticated word choice becomes the new default.
Okay, let's do a role play. Mark, let me set the scene. Imagine someone asks you, how was your week?
Okay.
First, give me the lazy brain version, the very version, the version most learners would actually produce.
My week was very busy. I had a very important meeting on Monday. The project I'm working on is very difficult. My boss was very stressed, so the whole team was very tired by Friday. But the weekend was very good. I had a very nice dinner with my friends, and I felt very relaxed.
Okay, painful, right?
Painful. Every sentence has a very in it. The vocabulary is flat. The personality is invisible. It communicates information, but it doesn't bring any of me to the description.
Now give me the upgraded version. Same week, same content, but the brain forced onto the better path.
My week was hectic. I had a critical meeting on Monday. The project I'm working on has been pretty brutal. My boss was running on fumes, so the whole team was completely drained by Friday. But the weekend was wonderful. I had a lovely dinner with my friends, and I felt totally recharged.
And just listen to the difference. Same week, same situations, same level of grammar, but version 2 is alive. It has texture, it has movement, it has personality.
And not a single word in version 2 is hard. Hectic, critical, brutal, drained, wonderful, lovely, recharged. These are all words a B2 learner already knows. They were just buried under the lazy default of very.
And once those words start coming out instead of very, the whole impression you create changes. You sound thoughtful, engaged, articulate, without any actual increase in difficulty.
This is why the Stop Saying Very lesson is one of the highest leverage changes a B2 or C1 learner can make. It costs almost nothing in terms of new learning, but it transforms how you sound.
Let's go through the situations where very sneaks in most often, because if you can spot the high-risk moments, you can prepare for them.
Yes, 5 situations.
Situation 1. Describing how you feel.
This is the biggest one. I'm very tired. I'm very busy. I'm very stressed. I'm very happy. Anytime someone asks, how are you or how's it going, the lazy brain almost always reaches for very plus a basic emotion word.
Fix. Build a small personal arsenal of emotion upgrades. Choose 3 or 4 upgrades for each common emotion you describe a lot, and practice using them in your inner narration before you ever have to use them in conversation, so they're ready when the moment comes.
Situation 2. Describing weather, food, or experiences.
The weather is very hot, the food was very good, the trip was very nice. Same lazy pattern, different categories.
Fix. Specifically practice upgrades for these everyday categories: weather, food, places, events. These are the categories of small talk, which means you describe them constantly, so the upgrades there pay off the most.
Situation 3. Giving compliments.
Your presentation was very good. Your idea is very interesting. Your work is very nice. Lazy compliments don't land. They sound polite but flat.
Fix. When you compliment someone, be specific and strong. Your presentation was excellent, especially the way you handled the questions. That idea is genuinely fascinating. Your work is really impressive. Specific and strong compliments are remembered. Lazy compliments are forgotten.
Situation 4. Talking about work or projects.
Work is full of very traps. Very busy, very difficult, very important, very stressful, and in professional contexts, the laziness sounds especially weak.
Fix. Build a professional upgrade vocabulary. Hectic, demanding, critical, challenging, intense, overwhelming, manageable, rewarding. These are all B2 words. They just need to become your defaults in work contexts.
Situation 5. Quick responses in fast conversations.
This is the hardest one. When the conversation is moving fast and you don't have time to think, very arrives before you can stop it.
Fix. Pre-train your top upgrades through daily inner narration. The more often you've used absolutely shattered or completely fascinated in your own head, the more accessible they are in real-time speech. Inner narration is your training ground. Conversation is your performance.
And the meta lesson across all 5 situations.
The meta lesson. The brain's defaults are built by repetition. Whatever you repeat the most becomes the default. And right now, you've been repeating very your whole English life. So very is the default. The work is to repeat better words enough that they become the default. Not through study, through use.
Word tour?
Word tour.
First word, default.
A default is the option that something automatically chooses when no other choice is made. We talked about it before, but it's especially important here. Your brain has defaults for almost every speaking moment, and vary has been the default intensifier for most B2 learners for years.
For example, the whole challenge of advanced vocabulary is shifting your defaults, not adding new words, but changing which existing words your brain reaches for first. Or, her default reaction to any compliment was to deflect, even when she actually felt grateful. Repeat, default. Default.
Next, lexical. Lexical is the adjective form of lexicon, meaning vocabulary. So lexical choice means the specific words you choose to use. It is a slightly technical but extremely useful word for anyone interested in language and learning.
For example, the difference between very tired and completely shattered is not a grammar difference. It is purely a lexical one. Or, he had a wide lexical range when he wrote, but in spoken English, he tended to fall back on the same handful of words. Repeat, lexical.
Lexical.
Next, to override. To override means to take control of something automatic and replace it with a deliberate choice. We override default settings on phones, we override habits in our lives, and in language learning, we override the brain's lazy defaults to install better ones.
For example, the 3-day forcing method works by forcing you to consciously override the brain's default path until a new path takes its place. Or, she had to override her instinct to apologize before she could deliver feedback that actually helped her team. Repeat, override.
Override.
Next, active versus passive vocabulary. This is a phrase, not a single word, but it is one of the most important concepts in advanced language learning. Your passive vocabulary is all the words you understand when you read or hear them. Your active vocabulary is the smaller set of words you actually produce in your speech and writing. The gap between them for B2 and C1 learners is usually enormous.
For example, most B2 learners have a much larger passive vocabulary than active, which means they understand far more than they use, and the real growth is in moving words from passive to active. Or, he had a passive vocabulary that easily put him at C1, but in conversation, he sounded more like a high B1 because he never reached for the words he actually knew. Repeat, active versus passive vocabulary.
Active versus passive vocabulary.
Next, to reinforce. To reinforce means to strengthen, support, or make more solid through repetition. In neuroscience, we reinforce neural pathways. In learning, we reinforce habits. In conversation, every time you use a word, you reinforce its accessibility in your brain.
For example, every single time you reach for very, you reinforce its dominance as your default intensifier, making it harder for better words to compete with it. Or, the team kept reinforcing the same approach every meeting until nobody questioned whether it was still working. Repeat, reinforce.
Reinforce.
And finally, articulate. Articulate as an adjective describes someone who expresses themselves clearly, precisely, and elegantly. It is one of the highest compliments you can give a speaker, and the whole point of breaking the very habit is to sound more articulate without becoming more difficult.
For example, the most articulate speakers are not the ones with the biggest vocabulary, but the ones who reach for the right word at the right moment. Or, she was naturally articulate even in her second language because she had quietly trained herself to avoid lazy phrasing. Repeat, articulate.
Articulate. 6 words today: default, lexical, override, active versus passive vocabulary, reinforce, and articulate. And every one of these is a real, modern, useful English word that you'll hear in podcasts about learning, productivity, communication, and self-development.
And every one of these is a word that captures something specific about how the brain, language, and habits actually interact.
Sophie, if there is one thing you want every person watching to take away from this episode, what is it?
That your repetitive vocabulary is not a sign of weak English. It is a sign that your brain has been doing exactly what brains are designed to do, taking the easy path, saving energy. And the way out is not to study more vocabulary. The way out is to override the brain's defaults until better words become the new defaults.
And the work is not painful. It is just uncomfortable for a few days. 3 days of conscious interruption. 3 days of saying, what's the better word for this? 3 days of choosing the upgrade instead of the lazy default. And then the brain starts to do the work for you.
And after a few weeks, you'll catch yourself saying completely drained instead of very tired, and you won't have planned it. You won't have thought about it. The new path will have become the default.
That is the moment you know the rewiring worked, when the upgrades come out of you without effort, when sophistication is no longer a deliberate choice but a natural state.
And the cool thing is, once you've done this for very, you can do it for any other lazy default in your speech. Good, nice, thing, stuff, get, make. All of these have lazy default uses and high-impact upgrades. Once you've trained yourself to override one default, the method works for all of them. And your English starts to climb, not because you are learning new words, but because you are finally using the words you already had.
Small challenge before we go. Try the 3-day forcing method, just for very. 3 days. Day 1, count how often you say it. Day 2, interrupt yourself every single time. Day 3, lock in the better words.
And then come back here, drop a comment, and tell us, what was your very count on day 1? Did anything surprise you? Did you catch yourself in moments you didn't expect? Because the count itself is the first step. The awareness is the seed of everything that follows.
And once you've done it for very, let us know what you want to tackle next. We can build the same method for any lazy default in your speech.
Because the real fluency you are reaching for is not waiting in some new vocabulary book. It is waiting inside the words you already know. The only thing standing between you and that fluency is your brain's preference for the easy path.
I'm Mark.
I'm Sophie.
Thank you for being here.
Thank you for being willing to override your defaults.
Stop saying very. Find the better word. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.